So moving on to our next featured reader. Lorraine Padden is a Touchstone Award-winning poet whose work appears regularly in notable journals. Her haiku have also received honors from Tricycle Magazine, HSA, which is the Haiku Society of America, the Tokotomi International Haiku Competition, and the British Haiku Society, among others. Her work is featured in the newly released A New Renaissance 13, the acclaimed anthology project that showcases emerging voices in English language haiku. Upwelling, her debut collection of haiku and related short forms, was published by Red Moon Press in 2022. And here's Lorraine.
Thank you all so much. It's just such a pleasure to be with you all. And thank you, Deanna. That was just stunning. A very hard act to follow. So I will read a variety of work that will include some poems from my book Upwelling, which was shortlisted for a 2022 Touchstone Distinguished Book Award. And maybe I'll throw in one or two poems that are now out in A New Resonance, which is the annual Red Moon anthology I was invited to participate in. Here is an image of my book, which came out last fall. And I'll just mention just briefly, I was so honored. My sister was a visual artist, and I put one of her woodblock prints on the cover of the book. And it came out in September. I sent her a copy for her birthday in October, and she passed away very suddenly in December. So I'm thinking maybe the title of my next book will be something like Just in Time. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you. And then here's also A New Resonance. Wonderful folks are in this book. It's available from Red Moon Press. It's just a stunning collection. I was honored to be invited to take part. So while I usually like to do a visual something for folks to read along, I think I'll just go old school and just read. And I'll throw in a comment here or there. Toward the end, I'll share just a couple of tanka and then two very brief haiku. So in the meantime, I will start off with shorter forms. And I like to think of these tiny poems as a really big tent. So in a big tent, there's a lot of room for lots of thematic stuff. And I think these poems can hold everything. So what I'll share might leap around a little bit, but hopefully there's room for it all. And I hope it'll be okay. So I'll start off first. Thank you, Greg, for requesting this. This is the poem that just won a Touchstone Award. Once more around the dance floor, ivy pole. Once more around the dance floor, ivy pole. Ginkgo walk, a stream overflowing with images. Ginkgo walk, a stream overflowing with images. Fiddlehead ferns, the first of 4 movements. Fiddlehead ferns, the first of 4 movements. Allegro moderato, the pace of mid-March icicles. Allegro moderato, the pace of mid-March icicles. Pushing it out of the way, snowdrops. Pushing it out of the way, snowdrops. Clear cut, a woodpecker forages sideways. Clear cut, a woodpecker forages sideways. Softening embers, our tabby curls into her tail. Softening embers, our tabby curls into her tail. Wolf moon, papering over the windows for the Ave Maria. Wolf moon, papering over the windows for the Ave Maria. Hope chest, the forget-me-nots pressed into her Bible. Hope chest, the forget-me-nots pressed into her Bible. Stained glass, the half-empty church. Stained glass, the half-empty church. Shuttered monastery, the keening of bell crickets. Shuttered monastery, the keening of bell crickets. Fork in the road, King James heads to the garage sale. Fork in the road, King James heads to the garage sale. Shadow side of the oak, where the noose hung. Shadow side of the oak, where the noose hung. Exposed bedrock, the all-white jury acquits. Exposed bedrock, the all-white jury acquits. Against the current, she teaches her daughter about salmon. Against the current, she teaches her daughter about salmon. The half-moon scars of a self-made man. The half-moon scars of a self-made man. Bearded iris, their blossoming pronouns. Bearded iris, their blossoming pronouns. Clipped wings, the hallway chatter about makeup. Clipped wings, the hallway chatter about makeup. Misty night on her usual corner, halo effect. Misty night on her usual corner, halo effect. High watermark, the cut above her elbow. High watermark, the cut above her elbow. Every fifth of gin, how often it never happened. Every fifth of gin, how often it never happened. A tinge in the smoking jacket, box elder. A tinge in the smoking jacket, box elder. Extended family, the hickory hangs onto its last leaf. Extended family, the hickory hangs onto its last leaf. Late afternoon, a second stroke closes the enso. Late afternoon, a second stroke closes the enso. Autumn sky, how often I use the past tense. Autumn sky, how often I use the past tense. Fall migration, shifting colors in the still life. Fall migration, shifting colors in the still life. Shining wind, the luster of robin's egg blue. Shining wind, the luster of robin's egg blue. Another pregnancy lights up the bardo, fireflies. Another pregnancy lights up the bardo, fireflies. Dandelion tuft, I watch her run for the bus. Dandelion tuft, I watch her run for the bus. That last one actually was selected for the Golden Triangle Haiku competition. So it's actually on a placard somewhere on the streets in Washington, D.C. as we speak, which is kind of a fun thing. Okay, so here are our three tanka. Clouded moon, the half-formed thought in a hand curving across her belly. Clouded moon, the half-formed thought in a hand curving across her belly. Morning braids, a few strands of corn silk dangle from an ear. Morning braids, a few strands of corn silk dangle from an ear. At war with his blanket, my father relives his nights in the trenches. At war with his blanket, my father relives his nights in the trenches. So these last two, Haibun, the first one I'll just read once. It's very brief. The second one, however, I would love to share it two ways with you. But I'll do the first one first. Firstborn flowers. In the place where we scattered her ashes last summer, there's now a tiny crown of purple shoots adorning the snow. Early March, just enough green to believe. The title of that one was borrowed from a Shakespeare sonnet. So for the second Haibun, if you all are willing, it's from my book Upwelling, and it's a braided Haibun. So there's a portion of prose, first line of the poem, prose, second line of the poem, prose, and then the final line of the poem. And it's an interesting experience to read it on the page, because visually you can follow, and then you have the haiku sort of braided in there. So I'd like to read it the way it presents on the page. And then I would love to offer it a second time with just the prose and the haiku at the end. And I would really love your feedback on which version resonates with you and why. It's an interesting idea to take in the work visually or just by listening to it. So I'd be really curious about your feedback. So here's the first go around. This is the braided or the woven version. Throttle. The Bronco's on and off the brakes, so I ease up to leave more room between us. Some swerving each time the driver reaches over to tend to what I imagine must be an excited puppy in the passenger seat. Playdate. He pulls over to the curb so everyone behind him can make their way around. The sound of marbles. Those curious dog ears suddenly become the tousled hair of a young boy cowering as Bronco lifts himself out of his seat and leans over with both hands, hitting the floor. So now I'll read it one more time with the haiku at the end. Throttle. The Bronco's on and off the brakes, so I ease up to leave more room between us. Some swerving each time the driver reaches over to tend to what I imagine must be an excited puppy in the passenger seat. He pulls over to the curb so everyone behind him can make their way around. Those curious dog ears suddenly become the tousled hair of a young boy cowering as Bronco lifts himself out of his seat and leans over with both hands. Playdate. The sound of marbles hitting the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lorraine. That was really, really wonderful. Beautiful reading.
Thank you so much.
It was excellent. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you all.
You can all unmute now if you like.
Lorraine, it was a wonderful reading. I don't know which way I like the high, but I like it both ways. I have to think about it a little more. I saw the haiku a little better listening to it the second way, but I did catch the pause, and it was interesting the way it was threaded. So anyway, it's a good poem. I love it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's an interesting experiment to see how these things land if we don't have the visual guide in front of us and we're just listening.
I would agree that I found the second reading for me worked a little bit better, because on the first reading, not having the visual, I had a hard time separating the two. out. So I think visually, I think if it's written, the first version is great. And if it's being read out loud, perhaps the second. That would be my opinion.
So I have the opposite point of view. I loved, well, I love the high burn. It's remarkable. And I felt that the tone and the pacing that you gave to the first version let me understand what was going on. And that last line is such a killer when it's read in the first version.
You have a lot of friends in school?
Yeah, that I witnessed that happening, and I literally got around the corner, pulled off, and when my heart stopped racing, I, grabbed my phone and made some notes. So it was just, and I even thought, geez, what should I do?
Right.
Yeah, what can I do? And then I became afraid that if it could be confrontation, it could none of my business. I mean, all of these things, right? But anyway.
I would like to say that there's a third way of doing this. I too enjoyed both readings, and I really like the ambiguities created by the first version in particular. And I wrote something like this that also involved cars several years ago, and it was called "Is Where the Car Is," and a haibun. And the way I got around this is performing it is I had a chorus behind me reciting the lines of the haiku.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it was pretty effective, I think. I've done it twice now, 2 or 3 times now. I performed it, including at Haiku Canada in Vancouver. But the fun part about it is I called the chorus the briquettes. But I think of haiku and a haibun as a Greek chorus anyway, as nature commenting on the foibles of man when I write them. So it was really fun to actually have a chorus reciting the poem.
I think when you're providing the verbal, that reading it both ways is awesome, because you have not shied away from subjects that are so often shoved under the table in all of your work. And I admire and appreciate it. And Deanna as well, really appreciate the fact that you haven't shied away from subjects that oftentimes never hit the page.
Thank you.
Yes, we were really lucky today to have such extremely good writers, book to book, back to back. So congratulations. Your readings were really wonderful. And of course, we've recorded these readings and they will be put on our website by soon.